So, welcome back to my fourth video on my first experiences with an electric unicycle, and more specifically, the veteran Sherman Max. I can't say enough how much I love this electric unicycle. It was such a pain to learn, but it is so worth it once you learn how to ride it. It has a 100-mile range. It has plenty of power. It's just amazing. So in this video, I'm pretty much doing a stress test on the battery. So this is Mount Lemmon. Obviously the footage is way sped up because I wanted to keep this video at about 10 minutes, but I didn't want to cut out any of the footage. I wanted you to see the whole lapse from the very first tour stop or scenic point on Mount Lemmon up to the main tourist stop at, it's really just the midpoint of Mount Lemmon, but that's the point that everybody stops at, and they go out and hike a little bit and take pictures, and then they go back down the hill. It's really only the halfway point. I think it was only 12 miles up from, or between those 2 points. So this is 12 miles up, 12 miles down, and going uphill, it wasn't as fast as I would have liked it to be, but it was still an enjoyable speed. I think I was still going at least 20 miles an hour, even at the worst hills. You can see I'm going past cyclists. There's still cars passing me, so I'm going in between like 5 and 35 miles an hour most of the time, so about 20 on average, I would say. Or no, 20 at the minimum. I think by this point I had my speed limiter set to 35 miles an hour, which is the highest you can set the beep to warn you that you're at the speed limit that you set, even though they claim that the max speed on this is 45 miles an hour. So I just kind of permanently have it set at 35 now to let me know that I'm at the edge of my safe range. But I was glad to find on this trip that going up hills, if I tried to exceed 20 miles an hour or whatever the physical limit was on however steep the hill was, if the hill was too steep and I was trying to exceed the speed that it was capable of doing, it would actually beep at a lower speed than what I chose. So like I'd be going 25 and kind of struggling on a hill, and I pushed a little bit more, and it beeped at me, and it did the tilt back. So it was nice to know that it would actually do that instead of feeling it kind of stumble forward because it was out of power. One thing that made me choose the Sherman over a lot of other ones before I bought it in the months leading up to it is there was a few people that did a lot of hill climb tests, and they actually took the temperature of like the circuit board and stuff like that. And the Sherman's the one that consistently didn't want to back down. And then this ride here just kind of confirmed it. I didn't take the temperature of like the motherboard or anything like that. I might someday. I don't have like a FLIR camera, but I want to get a temp gun for other reasons. And I also have a multimeter with a thermostat on it that I can use. I can just snake it in there and see what the temperature of the board is. But it did phenomenally on these hills. Going uphill and going downhill, it was a little sketchy at first because your instinct with anything with a wheel, you think that you're gonna start gaining speed rolling downhill. But being an electric motor, in theory, at least this style of motor, it has the same power going forward as it does backwards, or vice versa. It has the same power going backwards as it would going forwards. So if I can climb a hill, a really steep hill at 20 miles an hour, I can descend it at 20 miles an hour. So I just took a nice leisurely stroll back down the mountain on the really steep areas, and then just kind of rode like normal on all the other areas. But this mountain, I just love this mountain. Riding it in a car, motorcycle, anything, it's so much fun. So this is the main tour stop where everybody stops to take photos. Honestly, it's only halfway up the mountain. The mountain's like a total of 9,200 feet or yeah, 9,200 feet or something like that. It goes up into a little town unless you take a right turn, and then it goes up into the ski area and the main high altitude hiking area. And that's much higher than the town. That's like 9,200, 9,400 feet. But like I said, this was only halfway up to it, but it's still such a beautiful view. So I'm going downhill now. I think by this point, I can't remember if I have my road tire on it or if I still have the factory tire. It's so hard to tell. I shot all these videos within like my first month of riding it. I think this might have been right at just after the 2-week mark. Yeah, this was about 2 days after the the Reddington Pass off-road section. I gave myself a day of rest, and then I rode this, and then 2 days later I went up for the 4th of July weekend where I rode it in a parade, doing about 2 miles an hour the entire time, really testing my low speed capability. But I'll talk about that in the next video. It's just when I shot all these videos in quick succession, I was excited, I fully edited them, and then they just kind of sat on my hard drive because I couldn't think of anything to say. I didn't want to write a script for all these videos, but they've just been sitting there for so long that I just decided to ramble off on top of them and finally get them out there for everybody to enjoy and to ask comments or questions in the comments of anything that you might be thinking about when it comes to electric unicycles. I've done a lot of research. I've had about half a year of experience, so go ahead and ask away. I try to get back to everybody that I can. Right here is a little video trick that I found with the DJI Pocket 2. If you turn the camera upside down, it automatically flips the image, obviously. But the closer you get it to the ground, like the more action-packed or cinematic you can make it. The only downside is that the railing really cuts off the scenic view, but it looks fast even before I sped it up. I almost forgot to mention the battery life. So it's advertised that this has a 100-mile range. Now we all know like the 100-mile range is going a reasonable speed, like probably like 25 miles an hour the entire time. And I recently actually put that to test, and I didn't get any video on it. I just went for a 50-mile ride, and I came back with about half a battery. But on this hill, it was 12 miles to the tourist stop, which is about like normally a 15-minute drive. And it was 12 miles back down to the parking lot that I started in. So that was like, let's just say a total of 25 miles. It killed half the battery in 25 miles. So even when you're stressing it, going up a hill like that, you still get a 50-mile range. Well, I guess not all of it was uphill, but half of it was uphill, half of it was downhill. So if you're going through really hilly terrain that ends up being the same altitude on average, you'll still get a 50-mile range out of this electric unicycle, at least when it's brand new. Another thing that I bought for it was the charger it comes with is just absolute crap. I immediately upgraded the charger. One, because I wanted to semi-permanently mount it where I always park my electric unicycle, and I wanted the factory one as my travel one. But two, I didn't want to be charging the battery to 100% all the time. I don't need a 100% battery. And if you charge your battery to 100% all the time, you actually significantly lower its battery longevity. So I got the one on Alien Ride's website. I think you could buy it other places, but he's always got shit in stock. I paid like $200 for it, I think. But you can not only choose what percentage you want to charge your battery to, but I also charge it at 3 amps, so it keeps the batteries nice and cool while it's charging, because I honestly don't care how long it takes to charge, as long as it gets to 80%, and then it stops at 80%. Because when I'm doing daily commutes, I just charge it to 80% every other day at 3 amps, and in theory, that's the best way to make your batteries last the longest. But whenever I go traveling or anything like that, I always charge it to 100%, just so I have that extra 20% battery life. And the other thing too is once this wheel reaches half a battery, there's no difference in between 50% and 100% when it comes to feel, but you can feel that it's low on power, or starting to get low on power once you reach 50%. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't think it's just the Sherman. It's probably every unicycle is like that.